Let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
The White House, honestly, is being very good at working with me to setting up a process with senators, House members, OMB, but it's going to take a little bit more time. So we're all working good faith. This was an aggressive deadline.
Yep, 1 week to go for Republicans to write and pass the big, beautiful bill. His future very much in doubt in the short term, especially with the deadline of July 4th. We'll break it all down for you.
Number 2.
That are walking out of this courthouse, taken away from their families. They don't have the lawyers. And that's why the state of New York is providing $50 million to cover legal services for people who are finding themselves in this situation.
What an embarrassing governor. The world is upside down. ICE looked at as the enemy, as assaults on agents are up 500%. Arrests multiply as we try to rid ourselves of the Biden illegal invasion. And Governor Hochul wants to give millions of your money, taxpayer dollars, for illegal defense. Ugh.
Number 1.
I have a message directly from the president. Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
So that is Caroline Leavitt, yesterday press secretary. Hurry up and wait. Could be a head fake as President Trump considers bunker busters to take out Iran's heavily fortified Fordo nuke plant. We're going to break down the decision and the latest in the war on Iran. And there's a lot at stake because, number one, Iran has been our enemy, not for the last few weeks or the last few years, for the last 40 plus years. We know that. They've killed Americans. They will continue to try to assassinate our current president. They put a death watch on Secretary of State, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, as well as former National Security Advisor John Bolton and others, Brian Hook. And they're saying, okay, we're going to kill these guys. That's okay. We're a superpower. Why are we taking? Well, we don't want to start a big war. Well, the militias in Lebanon, the militia over in Gaza, and there's another one in Yemen. What can you do about it? Let's try to avoid getting this into a big war. Well, now we have an opportunity to really bring him to its knees. And there's a lot at stake. We know what's going on in Israel. Every day they're receiving less and less rockets and missiles going their direction because it looks as though the Iranians are running out. Missile defense is not perfect, but they're doing great. And now Iran is basically with no missile defense, almost no defense. They have no air force. It's all been destroyed. And now every one of their 12 nuclear sites have been hit. Not destroyed, but hit. Here's Dave Ignatius on the delay, cut 4 of the Washington Post.
The Iranians have not trusted Trump to deliver. That's one reason these negotiations have not succeeded. Somehow, if Trump wants to succeed, he's got to build more trust than he has now, assuming the Supreme Leader remains alive. That's another wild card. If he should be killed in this period, I think that's the end of negotiations. But you know, with a little more trust and a serious effort by Trump, for the first time, you can see the outlines of a deal might be possible.
Couple of things. Who cares if they trust us or not? They have very few options. Surrender, destroy your nuclear plants, or we will. That should be it. I don't care about trust. That's fact. Alireza Jafarzadeh joins us now. He's the deputy director of the Washington office of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, and he's been basically fighting them and trying to get back in there for 40 years. Alireza, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Brian. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
How much damage has been done already to the defense of Iran?
Brian, I think what's even more important than all of the facts that everyone is following on the media is actually how we got here, what got us to the situation, the current crisis and war. Unfortunately, since 2002, when we first exposed the nuclear site in Natanz and Iraq in August of 2002.
Can I stop you right there? So we were dealing with a nuclear program, and we thought we had all the facts, but it was you guys that said, no, they haven't told you about this other secret plant, Natanz, which I think has been destroyed. But go ahead.
Yes, absolutely, Brian. You know, that exposure in August of 2002 about Natanz and Iraq triggered for the first time the inspections of Iranian nuclear sites by the IAEA. And then we exposed several other major nuclear sites, and not only enrichment, but we showed that there is a solid plan for building the bomb. The Shian Lavizan site that was the core and the brain of their nuclear bomb making, we exposed it, and the regime raised the buildings before they allowed the IAEA inspections, which again, they still found traces of highly enriched uranium. In 2005, we exposed the site in Fardo, underground site under the mountains. Unfortunately, no one did anything about all of these revelations, about over 100 cases of exposure of these sites. Instead, the Western nations, led by Europe, rushed to appease the Ayatollahs, and then various administrations here in the United States. I think the most vivid case was the Biden administration gave them pallets of cash in 2015 that led to the nuclear deal, the so-called CPOA. And what did that do, Brian? They legitimized the nuclear weapons program of the regime. This site, Fardo, that we're talking about now, it's part of the JCPOA, that they can have that place running. They can have 1,000 centrifuges there. Guess what? This is the place that they are enriching uranium up to 60%, which is just a screwdriver's turn away from weapons-grade material. So my point is that, it was the appeasement that led to where we are, to the war and crisis that we're currently facing. But one thing that no one really paid attention was the sentiment and the views of the people of Iran. That's why we expose these nuclear sites. The people reject the nuclear program because they see that as a guarantee for the survival of the mullahs. It's not just the way they're threatening others. They're threatening their own people by staying in power.
So
they're draining the resources.
Okay, so having said that, this has been going on for about a week, and they're going to keep hitting. Israel knows exactly what they're doing. What do your sources say is happening inside Iran now, with nuclear scientists being shot, commanders in the Quds Force being killed, different commanders being killed in their beds? What's changed on the ground, if anything?
Well, certainly, I mean, the whole thing has clearly shifted, that the regime has never faced this situation before, because they always counted on what they had seen in the past, that no one is willing to put up against the Ayatollahs, that they can always get away with things the same way they got away with their terrorism, with their development of nuclear weapons, with their missile program. Right now, the situation has shifted. The main concern that Tehran has is the population itself, how they're going to actually rise up against the Iran regime. And it's not in a vacuum, because since 2018, there were several rounds of major uprisings against the Iran regime, people calling for change, chanting death to Khamenei, death to the oppressor, be the Shah or the supreme leader. They're concerned that if the next round of the uprisings start, they may not survive it. They're concerned about those resistance units on the ground, those who are confronting the Revolutionary Guards, because at the end of the day, they have the example of Syria before them. Syria seemed to be so invincible 11 days before they actually fell. And so things have changed both in the region.
But Alireza, when you say there's resistance, I know about you guys, you're on the outside. But what other resistance on the inside? We see people rise up and we see them get put into jail or murdered on site. They don't have the guns.
Well, that's exactly what the point is. Inside Iran, the MEK that you mentioned that was responsible for exposing all of the key sites, nuclear sites of Iran, they have what they call resistance units on the ground in various cities and towns. They were the ones who were acting as engine for change. They're the ones who are right now confronting Revolutionary Guards, of course, by doing, burning the pictures of the supreme leader and the commanders of Revolutionary Guards to show that the regime is not 10 feet tall. But at some point, the people will have to come to the confrontation with the Revolutionary Guards. That's why it's so important for the U.S. to recognize the right of the people to overthrow this regime, to recognize the right of those resistance units.
What do you want us to say? But as you know, we don't want our hands on regime change. We don't want to prop up another country. We don't want to pick their leaders. We want Iran to pick their leaders. And we saw what happened in Libya. They still have not really had a centralized government since Gaddafi was brutally killed. So how do you see this playing out?
Well, that's exactly the point that I'm making. I think, you know, the head of the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, she appeared before a hearing in the House right here via satellite. And when she was asked, what do you want from the United States? She said, let me tell you what we don't want. We don't want any foreign boots on the ground, no appropriation of money. The people of Iran have everything to bring about change in the country. All the United States need to do is to recognize the new realities on the ground. You don't want the Iraqi-style involvement. You don't want anything like that because Iran is extremely different than all the other things. Iran does have an alternative. You know, Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, who heads the parliament in exile, the NCRI, she appeared before the European Parliament 21 years ago at this time, saying that, you know, the choice is not just between the appeasement and war. There is a third option. You know, you need to rely on the people of Iran. And she appeared just 2 days ago again saying that because you invested on appeasement, you are now facing this crisis and war. But the only way out of it, without the involvement of the United States or any foreign countries, is to rely on the people of Iran, which have shown their ability, their power. It's not easy to know about the intelligence, about the nuclear sites of Iran, and yet this movement has exposed all of them. They exposed the terror operations of the Iran regime. They have been the main target of the killings inside the country, but also they have offered a solution.
One thing I hear is the Revolutionary Guard, if the Ayatollah is killed and the clerics are wiped out, the Revolutionary Guard steps up and they become a military dictatorship. Do you see that scenario?
No, because this is a clerical system. The whole system is built on the authority of the supreme leader. The guards are meant to protect the supreme leader. If the system cracks in any way or shape, whether it's the Revolutionary Guards or the supreme leader, they lose control over the whole thing. And there's not a scenario that you would have, you know, the country becoming like a military rule by the Revolutionary Guards, because the control comes from the top. But most importantly, look at the reality on the ground. In the past several rounds of uprisings in Iran, you know, in all 31 provinces, it wasn't just a certain area of the country or a certain sector of the society or just intellectuals. No, even the poor, the deprived, the smaller towns and cities were involved in the uprisings. The people see the Revolutionary Guards as their suppressors, but also as the plunderers of their wealth and of the nation. So there is no chance for this regime, once the equilibrium changes, there's no chance for them to survive. And I think I mentioned the case of Syria, because Syria played a big role in the overall strategy of the regime. Regime relied on Syria and Hezbollah and others, what they call strategic depth, for their survival. All of that is gone. This regime is weaker than it has ever been.
And the thing is, the Syria thing can't be underestimated, because Hezbollah was diminished and Russia was distracted. It allowed people to rise up and take out the minority Shia government, right? And the Shia government, unlike the population, was affiliated with Iran, but the population was mostly Sunni.
You know, the lesson learned from Syria is that, first of all, it displayed the weakness of the regime. And if there was anything the regime could do to keep Assad in power, they would have done it, as they did, you know, about 7-8 years before that. But the most important thing is that there was an organized force on the ground that started moving against the against the Syrian government. Everyone dismissed that chance, and that's the same situation in the country, in Iran. There is this organized force, you know, that they carried out about over 3,000 operations against the regime in Iran. You know, no one is paying attention to that. They're only relying on the reports about the mullahs, the negotiations, the talks, and, you know, the strikes and all of that. They don't pay attention on the ground.
From what you know, just real quick, I'm up against the clock. If we hit Fordo, does Iran make the decision to try to hit us? Because in a way, that would be suicide.
Well, you know, the Iran regime has been at war with the rest of the world for the past few decades.
Just yes or no? What do you think? Ali, just yes or no. Do you think they make the decision to hit us in Iraq or somewhere else?
Let me tell you this. If there was anything they could have done So far, they've already done it. This is a regime that is so weak and so vulnerable. This is the new reality of Iran, both in terms of the regime, but also in the sentiment of the population and the prospect for change.
Alireza Jafarzadeh, thanks so much for joining us. Let's hope you and your group are in power, because we love an ally in Iran. Thank you, Ali.
The U.S. president, going back decades, has made clear that Iran could not have a nuclear weapon. Republicans and Democrats. Congress has made clear they cannot have a nuclear weapon. The fact is, we're at a point where they almost undoubtedly have a nuclear weapon. And so this is the moment, if we are going to take action, to do so. And I believe the president is within his rights, and I do believe it's the right decision to use the B-52s to conduct an operation to eliminate the threat.
But I think you meant B-2s. I think B-52s can do it, but I've been told that B-2s will do it if we are to drop the bunker busters at the Fordo nuclear plant or any other targets. Retired General, 4-star General Jack Keane joins us now, Chairman for the Institute of the Study of the War, Fox News Senior Strategic Analyst. General, welcome back. Talked to you on TV twice. It was great. With the news is always evolving. What Mike Lawler said, the congressman thoroughly believes that the president is within his rights to do it. And you have told me you think this is an historic opportunity to take out this program.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the ending this nuclear threat, and it's very real. The Israelis have attacked 12 nuclear sites plus. They've damaged and destroyed a lot of it, but this final site is impregnable in the sense that to normal conventional bombs and aircraft. And obviously the Israelis could do something on the ground here and maybe also take down the power grid that supports it and the ventilation system. But there's a lot more risk associated with that. And then they may not actually accomplish the mission, and risk the personnel, but also may not accomplish the mission. So the best way to do it, obviously, is the capability we have. I mean, there's not a 100% guarantee it'll do exactly what we wanted to do, but there's no other alternative that's better, and certainly it's worth giving a go at this. Eisenhower, when he launched the Normandy invasion, you asked him what's the chances of success here. He said it was 50-50. But the alternative for him also is that they couldn't succeed against Germany if they didn't do it. So. That's where we are here. We can't let these folks have a nuclear weapon, and we should try to take it off the table once and for all. And I think when you look at it strategically and really see where Iran is now, with Hamas and Hezbollah decapitated, the Houthis, shut down in terms of taking control of the Suez Canal and the Red Sea because they were interfering with international trafficking. The Iraqi and Syria militia that work for the Iranians back in their box. None of these folks are providing any assistance to Iran whatsoever, which is absolutely amazing. Russia and China, nothing coming forward to assist the Iranians. They are completely isolated. And I think the reason is people see Iran is close to the end in terms of being finished as the dominated adversarial power in the region. So strategically, this is significant importance that actually goes beyond the obvious ominous threat of a nuclear weapon, which is staggering in itself. But we reset the strategic table in the Middle East as a result of bringing Iran to its knees like this. And I think the result will be a pathway for normalization with the Arab states and Israel. And clearly the Middle East will change completely as a result of it. So the strategic implications of this, in addition to the tactical and operational implications, are pretty significant.
So just looking at their proxies and what they could be thinking, we have this Elizabeth Kendall, a Middle East expert, says the Houthis are stunned on how Iran has been beaten up on this. Says they're probably thinking we should lie low at the moment and start maneuvering around and give ourselves and not reveal locations. They also say that in Iraq, the Shia militia leaders have become so worried about the technology of of Israel that they're using burner phones, changing their location, changing their numbers. They're almost afraid to do anything. They don't know because Israel has been so proficient at targeting these leaders.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think we haven't seen the last of Israel's surprises. I've talked to the Israeli generals that are helping to participate in this operation. And I mean, it is. And they said, to me, they said, General, listen, what we have achieved exceeded all of our expectations. I mean, they took down all 70 of their air defense batteries. They have hit 41 military sites and destroyed the capability at those sites. As you mentioned on television, they've hit 12 nuclear sites, either damaged or destroyed. They've hit 4 energy sites. And the leadership targets, there's 45 of them. And many of these people is a missile either in their apartment or in their office, or when they were attending a meeting, the military generals at the very outset. I mean, quite staggering in terms of the exquisite intelligence that the Israelis have. And obviously, the entire Iranian Air Force is done. It's over. It doesn't exist anymore. So, right. Yes, Iran is on its knees here, Brian. And the coup d'etat, so to speak, the final thing is just to take away their nuclear capability. And I think they're going to be extremely vulnerable, this leadership inside of Iran, to some type of regime change. And we're not talking about any invasion to do a regime change. This nonsense about forever wars that people are talking about, that doesn't apply here. We're not invading Iran to change the regime. We're not going to occupy Iran on the ground. We're not going to do any nation building with Iran. This is a limited strike in support of Israel's war. And if the Iranians are going to retaliate against us, then that changes everything, and it becomes our war to shut them down as a result of that retaliation. I really would find it hard to believe that the Iranians would have a very strong retaliation to what we're doing with one strike to take down the Fordo site, even though that's very important to them, because I think they know then that the survival of the regime would really be in doubt.
Evidently, the vice president and Witkoff have been told, get ready to go to the Middle East to have talks. But already Iran has rejected Trump's call for surrender with war with Israel. And they said they were not going to stop enriching. So I know about the culture and they don't want to look like they're weak. But the world, the facts are the facts. That's not the rhetoric that's going to stop Donald Trump from bombing out Fordo, is it?
No, absolutely not. And for our audience to understand what is really going on in the mind of the Ayatollah and his leadership group, they have built a nuclear industry and a vast enterprise actually to sustain an attack. So they have huge redundancy in multiple centrifuge sites, multiple enrichment sites, manufacturing and supply chains away from these nuclear sites. This is a significant industry, and they built it with the idea in mind that it can absorb an air attack, survive it, recover, and rebuild. That is where the Ayatollah is. That is why, Brian, for the last number of weeks, they came in and they said, listen, we want to maintain our enrichment capability only for civil nuclear power, because that's nonsense, as we all know it. And then when we say, no, we want you to voluntarily dismantle your whole enterprise. And they said, that's not going to happen. We're never going to do that. And why aren't they never going to do it? For the reason I just stated. The Ayatollah believes they would rather accept the airstrike, which is going on now, than voluntarily dismantle the enterprise with verification. If they do that, it's over. They think they can still survive this thing, and they're betting on the fact and actually hoping that Donald Trump gets frustrated with this whole process and doesn't attack and bring down the Fordo complex. That's what they really want.
So with him waiting 2 weeks, if he does do the attack, most everyone says the bunker busters are the 30,000-pound bomb. From what we know about Fordo, how you've been briefed, General Keane, do you believe that the bunker busters will be effective? A couple of them, one goes in, the second one follows?
Yes, I do think they'd be effective. Nothing is 100% guaranteed, for sure. I mean, we have not used this device to take down a facility that's underneath a mountain of rock. And from an engineer perspective, if it was a facility underneath a building, there's no doubt that we would be able to destroy the underground facility, because I've been told the cement structure itself helps to focus the energy of the blast. When you're underneath a mountain of rock, and the separation that's in that rock, it dissipates some of the energy of the blast. So I'm not an engineer. I'm not a scientist. This is out of my field, but I'm just providing secondary knowledge here. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, because it may be challenging. Let's get it done. The alternative is some kind of a ground operation to be done with all the inherent risks on it. It's likely we can do this, and we're not going to find out until we try it. And I think we should.
I want you to hear, just with the ramifications, if we go ahead and do this, what the message is to our other enemies. Cut 9 is General Teichert. He's the former senior defense attaché in the Middle East and former deputy undersecretary of foreign affairs. Cut 9.
The world is watching right now what is going on in Iran, both because of Israeli activities and the support from the United States. And whether it's Putin or Xi or Kim Jong-un, they're trying to determine whether the United States has both strength of capability and will. And if we do, then that provides a huge deterrent factor. And if we do not, then it causes them or entices them to consider malign activities around the world.
You agree it's a bigger story than just Iran?
Oh, yeah. The strategic implications. Whenever the United States is involved in X, in trying to achieve some end state for one of our allies and partners here, the whole world is watching. Can you imagine? I mean, the president just came back from the Middle East. He talked to the Arabs there. And they, privately, all the Arab states, they don't want Iran with a nuclear weapon. And they're looking at this thing. And if the president doesn't come to the aid of our closest ally in the region at its most significant moment, when they're trying to end the nuclear enterprise, which is an existential threat to their country, if we're not willing to come to the aid of Israel under those conditions, can you imagine what MBS in Saudi Arabia or MBZ in the UAE or the Kuwait leadership or the Bahrain leadership is saying? Well, what are the chances that they would come to our assistance if we were in trouble with Iran? And certainly our other allies and partners, namely Taiwan, is looking at this, and South Korea and the Philippines and Australia, through the same kind of lens. And I totally agree with him. The Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans, as well as the Iranians, when President Trump got elected, they had to completely reassess. They had their way with the Biden administration for 4 years, and they have been cautiously looking at every move President Trump makes in terms of how much aggression, how much can they get away with at the expense of U.S. leadership, because they believe they had their way with the previous administration. It's not isolated that there's war in Ukraine. It's not isolated, certainly, that Iran operationalized its proxies and there's war in the Middle East, and that Iran attacked through its proxies U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, where our troops were, over 350 times during the Biden administration, with the intention of driving us out of those bases, packing up in our bags and going home. So they know that there's a different leader here. And yes, is this something of a test for him in the sense of what they think of his willingness to come to the defense of an ally? Yeah, absolutely.
And so far, am I to conclude, General, that you think the hit will happen and you think it should happen at Fordo, right?
Yes, I do, because I'm convinced in my own mind the Ayatollah will never voluntarily dismantle the program. He's going to take his chances on whether we can dismantle it.
Got it. And General, lastly, I also think once this gets done and resolved, we have to let the Russians know we're back in Ukraine. I know it's political, it's a football, but we have to back Ukraine. We got to worry about our own defense. We only have a certain amount of armaments. I don't know why it's taken so long to ramp up. We've had this 5-alarm fire for now 2.5 years, but get them the weapons they need to continue to survive.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's the only thing that Putin really pays attention to. I know the sanctions, will hurt him, but he always believes he can manipulate around sanctions, and there's evidence to support that. But the increased military assistance, that's what makes a difference. That changes the battlefield. And listen, he's 39 months into this war, and he still hasn't come close to toppling Ukraine. Think of that. This is the biggest military in Europe, and he's lost literally half of his conventional military doing this. He's had 300,000 plus dead and 700,000 plus wounded, and lost more than half of his inventory of tanks, artillery, all armored vehicles, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And he hasn't come close to taking the country down. That's kind of where how many more years do you think he can do that if the United States is willing to continue to support Ukraine? Not money. And that's what would bring him to the negotiating table and say, okay, let's make some kind of a deal here.
And he also did the impossible. He woke up all of NATO. Between Trump's attitude towards NATO and Putin's aggression, NATO now realizes they got to start spending on defense. General Jack Keane, thanks so much. It's been great. Look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, always good talking to you, Brian, and your audience. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. With me in studio is James Kimmel Jr., author of a new book, The Science of Revenge, Understanding the World's Deadliest Addiction and How to Overcome It. James, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Really a pleasure to be here.
Revenge, people can think about their own lives. They can think about big stories, big movies. Revenge is always a part of it. And what made you think this is a perfect subject of a book? What intrigued you about it?
Well, what really intrigued me about it started with my own life, my own experience of revenge seeking, primarily as a litigator, a civil litigator, where I was being hired, by my clients to get revenge on their behalf legally against somebody who wronged them in their lives.
Civil suits.
Yeah, civil suits, right. And I had actually begun as a prosecutor, so criminal as well, moved into civil. And as I did that, the more and more I started to feel what you get with revenge is this amazing, flash of pleasure when you get a win. And that is extremely pleasurable. You want it more and more and more. For some people, not everyone. And I began to wonder, am I becoming addicted to this because I was really getting, kind of off on these wins, and my clients were willing to pay me enormous amounts of money, like addicts, to just get these wins over and over and over again for them. And that moved me more towards academics to find out what's happening inside your brain when you've got a grievance, you feel like you've been wronged, and you start to develop this craving. And what we see neurologically now inside the brain is that it activates the addiction and reward circuitry of inside your brain, the same circuitry that's active for drug addiction, alcohol, and gambling.
Why doesn't it last?
I'm sorry?
What? Why doesn't it last?
Oh, it doesn't last for the same reason it doesn't for drugs. So you get this dopamine high, it floats away rather quickly. Same way with narcotics. And so it's this temporary fix, but it leaves you craving. And that's kind of the goal with all addictions, right? You get this high, it feels great, you want another one and another one. And the brain doesn't sustain it. It can't sustain dopamine presence for very long inside the brain. It's too intense. So the brain starts to flush it out. But it leaves behind this lasting effect of, I want this again.
Can we see this in public? Can we see it in sports?
You certainly see it in sports. You see it with fans. You see it with athletes. And some percentage, and it's just like with other addictions, only maybe, we don't know for sure with revenge addiction, but we know that with substance use addiction, only about 20% of people who try alcohol or narcotics actually become addicted to it. And so it looks like about that percentage, same percentage of people maybe become addicted to revenge. And I would we could kind of picture that as the people who are in jail, right? Because this is what we know from FBI and Secret Service and public health data from the CDC and behavioral studies around the world is that revenge seeking is the primary motivation for all forms of intentionally inflicted human suffering and violence. And that goes from bullying on playgrounds all the way up through intimate partner violence, street and gang violence, violent extremism, all the way up through genocide, terrorism, and war.
Is it ever satisfying in reality? It might be perceived satisfying for you. You got him or her back. But is it really satisfying?
No, it never is, because it comes with these negative consequences. And that's really the definition of addiction. The definition of addiction is the inability to resist a desire, all right, for something powerful, despite knowing the negative consequences. So you know the negative consequences of retaliating against somebody in a certain situation. You do it anyway because you can't control it. That's compulsive revenge seeking. That's what addiction looks like.
So I want you to hear a certain president bait another future president and tell me if this fits your book.
No one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience.
So that humiliation at that Washington Correspondents' Dinner, Trump will never say I had anything to do with it. He shakes it off. I've asked him directly on camera, off camera. But what do you really think really was going on there?
That's exactly what's going on in America today on both sides. The humiliation, the endless shaming of the other, whoever the other is for you, that is intensely gratifying for you. We get major dopamine hits from owning the libs, and we own and get major hits from owning the conservatives. That is part of our brain biology. Can't deny it. We need to move away from it as quickly as possible.
It's destructive.
It is hugely destructive.
Is that really the theme too? You might do this, you understand it, I define it, but it's still destructive.
Hugely destructive. And if we want to go, MAGA, make America great again, we need to start with a make America forgiving again. Because I also have, and I talk about in the book extensively, there is huge new amazing neuroscience about the neurology of forgiveness. And forgiveness undoes all of this stuff. So where you have a grievance that is some sense of humiliation or shame, and that stimulates your revenge desire, forgiveness, instead of just covering up with a little bit of dopamine the way a revenge hit does, it actually shuts down the pain network in your brain so you don't experience it again. It shuts down the reward and pleasure circuitry of addiction so you're no longer craving revenge, and then it reactivates the prefrontal cortex. That's the area of your mind for self-control, executive function, decision-making. Forgiveness is like a wonder drug that works amazing wonders, and we just don't use it enough. We think it's weak when it's strength. It is huge self-healing strength.
But yet you have victim statements in courts. So, I just saw 2 days ago, this victim's daughter, she was jogging at Randall's Island, and she gets beaten by a convicted rapist, never should have been out. And she gets beaten to the point of death. I don't think she's much out of a coma now. But so after his conviction, the daughter gets up and speaks. Would you think it's counterproductive? I understand why the daughter wants him to see her, but do you think for her, what's best for her would be to forgive him?
Oh, absolutely. If she wants to heal from the pain.
That's the hardest thing ever.
It is. And we have the neuroscience that would show that is the only way she'll heal from the pain. There is no other alternative. We are all hardwired to forgive just as much as we are all hardwired to seek revenge. It's there. Though the ancient teachings of Jesus and the Buddha and other people who have talked about forgiveness as not only some sort of a pious way to get into heaven, but it is also a living in the moment way of healing from the wrongs of the past and not hurting yourself further.
And you're kind of freeing that person from playing a role in your mind and the rest of your life.
That's correct.
So this is not an example of it. It's an example of negative behavior. Trump wins an election. No one can accept it. And there becomes a mission among Democrats to diminish the victory and undo it. Here's Adam Schiff.
There's ample evidence of collusion of the campaign, and it's very much in the public record.
Do you have direct evidence of collusion with Russia?
Well, I think there is direct evidence, and there is significant evidence of collusion, and we've set that out time and time again.
It never happened, didn't exist. An investigation revealed nothing, but there was no hell to pay for that. But Trump keeps it in the back of his mind, never says it, but he clearly knows exactly who was out to get him, who tried to put him in jail after he got out.
That's right. That's right. Trump got elected on the vision. He said, at least back at CPAC, I am your retribution. I mean, he was willing to say, I will become, for a large group of people in this country, the drug that you want. I know you want retribution. I want retribution. I'll do it. But that is the same thing that is also happening on the liberal side. Nobody is forgiving anything, and that is a disaster.
But isn't there a line between street smart? For example, I don't want to be a victim, so I got to learn. You're out to get me. How many times are you going to stab me in the back and the front before I go, wait a second, I got to get myself some Kevlar, and I got to start avoiding those blocks.
That's
so
right.
to do that, a lot of times it's an offense. And I'll give you an example. People think he's getting revenge on those law firms. He's neutralizing them because those law firms were weaponized against him and his family. So even though it's unethical, you guys live in that world, that may perhaps unethical against the bar to go after law firms and make them basically pay an extortion. But what he's doing is clearing the field to make sure for the next 4 years at least, you do not take shots and try to destroy him.
Yeah, and we all as humans, though, we need to think about what is revenge versus what is self-defense. My book doesn't talk about self-defense. Self-defense, that's the fight or flight instinct. We all have it and we all need it. That's forward-looking against a present or near-term future threat. That's versus revenge seeking, which is always punishing people for something that happened in the past, no longer exists. It doesn't exist in this real world. It only exists inside your head. You've got to heal that and clear that out. So it's very slippery slope between punishing a law firm, right, for what they did in the past versus, as you say, clearing the field going forward, right? Where does that line hit? I mean, is he really stopping them? Have they even threatened at all to start coming after him again? No.
But the law of the jungle is, okay, I know what you're going to do. You're going to weaponize yourselves again. But you know what's interesting? One of the things he said is, I want you to take a few, what do they call pro bono cases on causes that, whether it's transgender or some causes dear to the conservatives' heart. So that's almost like a positive. I need your expertise to help out other people that can't afford you for causes that are conservative.
It is a less negative consequences than shutting down the law firm, right?
Yes.
I mean, he didn't do that, right? He didn't try to say, you're all out of business and I'm making it so. But he has that threat behind it. So there's a lot of revenge and retaliation. You have to admit, going after the law firms is really about his grievance of feeling like every law firm in the nation had gone after him for the last 4 to 8 years. And now it's time for a little bit of payback. That's really what is the root of that.
You sit there at the defense table and you see, then you wait and you say, one day. One day. And that day came with a victory. If his win is a victory, that's a retribution. I'm going to show you. I'm going to win. I'm going to get back in power, do the things I was supposed to be doing the last 4 years. But when you get in there, you got to make sure you look forward. And I think for the most part he is. That's my opinion. One person who didn't and ran on it was Letitia James, the Attorney General in New York. Listen to her trying to get elected and reelected.
I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president when our fundamental rights are at stake. I believe that the president of these United States can be indicted for criminal offenses.
Will you sue him for us? Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the He's going to know my name personally.
That man in the White House who can't go a day without threatening our fundamental rights.
Yes, we need to focus on Donald Trump and his abuses.
That's what she ran on. She elect me because I'm going to go after him.
That is correct. That's as true as him saying, I am your retribution, right? Both sides are now going after each other, and it's all about the gratification. You can see with Donald Trump, at least I can see it. I don't know how you feel, but it looks to me like he enjoys getting the libs. He feels good. I think the libs feel good. And when the libs are finally getting after the conservatives, there's a lot of gratification going on there. There is never, though, never anybody that goes, you know what? I forgive this. We're moving on. I'm going to forgive this. The country needs forgiveness. Make America forgiving again is what needs to occur.
You know who has those attributes is George W. Bush. He really does. He's over it. Him and Clinton's are friends. The father lost to Bill Clinton. They end up being best friends. It's a great example, isn't it?
It really is.
And the other thing would be, I think it started with the impeachment. Yeah, was Bill Clinton's behavior terrible? Absolutely. It's been confirmed. But the fact that they went over the top and it got so personal and so graphic, they'd be like, okay, I'm going to win and I'm going to get you back. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get you back. And then it went with the election mess and Gore Bush. I'm going to get you. I don't think you really won. I won the popular vote. I'm going to get you back. And that started this cycle, along with the unpredictable win.
And these shames, shame, humiliation, betrayal, those three are some of the most powerful, painful experiences humans can have. It activates the pain circuitry in the brain. You can see it happening. And that triggers this desire to retaliate that can go from fantasy to violence.
Here's my last point.
Yeah.
And this doesn't really mean revenge, but motivation. Let's say a couple of people walked up to you in 11th, 12th grade and go, whatever you do, you're not, I know you want to be a lawyer, but you're not that smart. You're never going to be successful. And you go, okay, I'll show you. And then you use that feel. I'm going to show you. And you use that as motivation. And it gets you to law school and you have this successful practice doing well. Now you're an author too.
Yeah.
So didn't it motivate you in a positive way?
In a positive way. And I didn't use it for negative consequences. I used it to better my life. I didn't attack and harm other people.
But use it as motivation. It's a negative thing. Use motivation.
It's a great way to use that desire for revenge to motivate yourself. It's a fantastic way. And actually, I have that exact experience. I was bullied on a farm as a kid. The bullies came one night, shot and killed our dog. They came back 2 weeks later, blew up our mailbox. I went after them with a gun, confronted them by cornering them at a barn, and then put the gun down and walked away, thank God. Or I wouldn't be here today. So I know exactly what this is.
Was this an episode of Yellowstone?
Yeah.
I mean, when did you grow up? In the 19th century? What's happening? Where were you?
Central PA. I was just Central PA, and we were hunters. There were guns, and this thing came out at me.
So this got you. This was an intriguing emotion that you wanted to get to.
And
the
I cover this in the book. I mean, it's a really that's my sort of foundational John Wick story, right? I'm kind of I had to. It was a beagle. I mean, it's just like John Wick. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, when you get there and you prove that person, they don't even remember that they said it to you.
Right.
But you use it as motivation, so in the ends justify the means.
Well, I used it to start to get. So I thought I'll go legalize revenge. I'll go into the professional revenge-seeking business by becoming a lawyer, where I can get it legally. And lawyers have the only license, right, to manufacture, distribute, prescribe revenge for the entire population, and that's how we make our money. And it is a lot of money, and it's a lot of damage. So there's a lot to think about there.
I tell you, it all worked out because it motivates you to great success, and then you write a book about how to solve it.
Right.
It's a win-win story. James Kimmel Jr., congratulations on the science of revenge, understanding the world's deadliest addiction and how to overcome it. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Brian.
Right.